Joining me right now, the vice president of the Trump Organization and author of a great new book called Triggered: How the Left Thrives on Hate and Wants to Silence Us. It's Donald Trump Jr. Donald, welcome to the show, and thanks for doing this.
Good to be with you. How you doing, Nick?
I'm doing great. Read the book yesterday. It's excellent. Before I get to the book, well, let's start with a title. Triggered. What does the left do that triggers you the most? Because they throw a lot of garbage at you.
Well, it's not so much me being triggered. It's more about anything that a conservative does triggering them. It's more about anything that Donald Trump does, whether it's a win, triggers them. Even killing al-Baghdadi, the leader of ISIS, that triggered them, so much so that the Washington Post wrote an article calling him an austere religious scholar, that rather than a rapist, murdering thug who's doused people in gasoline and lit them on fire in cages. So, you know, I think the left is pretty triggered by common sense, by math, by facts. And, you know, that's a scary place to be in politically.
Yeah, and your dad brings all that. You know, in the last 25, 30 years in Washington, both sides actually agreed on one thing, that Washington was broken, that it wasn't working. And then your father comes along, an outsider, and flips over the apple cart. And it turns out only one side really believed that it needed to be fixed. The Dems just hate your dad for a million, and some of the, like you said, establishment Republicans. How did we get to this point? And why wouldn't he be? He is a real threat to their jobs, isn't he?
Oh, he is. Listen, he's a threat to the little, cabals that they've built on both sides. I think that's universal in D.C. He's a threat to the swamp. He's taking it on. He'll negotiate those contracts. You saw what he did with Air Force One. He goes, Boeing, hey, take $1 billion off. Oh, okay. Why didn't you do it for less before? Well, no one ever thought to ask. Like, no one bothered to ask. I mean, he's running the country like a business. You see the results. You see the successes. You see all-time low unemployment numbers. How's your 401k doing? All-time high startup businesses. Running the country like a business, because that's what you've been doing for decades. Hey guys, it actually works, rather than these politicians who have brilliant ideas like giving $150 billion in cash to Iran. That's the prior administration's brilliance. So you're taking something and just totally shocking the system, and they can't handle it. It's terrible. But who's benefiting is Americans, and that's huge.
It is huge. And let me point, I've been saying this right after your dad got elected. I went, oh boy. And my friend's like, what do you mean, oh boy? I said, do you understand the pushback he's going to get? And not too many people say this, although you addressed it in your book. And they said, well, why do you feel they're going to attack him? I said, he's a blonde-haired, blue-eyed Christian alpha male billionaire. Your dad personifies to the far left the devil, does he not?
Oh, 100%. It's not just him. You saw that throughout, right? I mean, they'll try to take out a Republican. That's nothing new. I mean, no other Republican has ever had this kind of incoming, this kind of onslaught against them. But hey, they try to do it to a 15-year-old kid. Look at Nick Sandmann, the Covington Catholic kid, who had the gall to be, white, Christian, wearing a MAGA hat and from the South. Like, that's like the holy grail. We got to destroy this kid. We'll ruin his life at 15 for doing nothing because the story was so good. Just like they tried to do to Kavanaugh, how they more than happily destroy his life, ruin him. Only thing I knew about him before that was I saw pictures of him serving soup in a soup kitchen every weekend. But we'll destroy him. We'll destroy his family, his career, everything like that with these false accusations. They were so important that Senator Feinstein sat on them for 3 months before doing anything about it. So important. He was obviously a gang rapist, right? So they were so important that the second he got confirmed, all that got dropped, and now all those women are, well, it was a lie. We, just tried to stop it, and there's no credit, there's no accountability. Nothing happens to these people. They can do whatever they want to Trump supporters, to conservatives. If you did the same thing to a liberal, you'd never hear about it. It would dominate the news cycle for years. And that's the bias that we're living in. And I got to experience that as, the number 2 target of the Mueller investigation. So that's what the book covers in much greater detail than I can do on my social media feeds. And I think, people will get a good insight into my family, into my father, into the thinking, into the process and the campaign, and all of the hatred that stemmed from it once my father was in office and, we were under attack.
How the fuck is CNN still on the air? I mean, we've known, you and I, we've been known for years how crooked they are. But Project Veritas went undercover. How are they still on the air the next day? And is your dad going to go after him with a suit? I heard that.
I don't know what he's doing with this stuff, but I mean, I think the reality is they've overplayed their hands so many times, man. I spend an entire chapter, if not more, in the book, really talking about the media bias, the way that they are able to just filter and say whatever they want without accountability, without this, because the left will back them, Hollywood will back them, pop culture will back them. I think just real Americans have to be able to see through that nonsense and be able to push back. And if they do that and they start actually looking at the facts, not just what you're reported in the news, meaning like, is that true, or did you just see it on CNN? Because they're two very, very different things. I think once you look at that, the American, voter will look at that and reelect Trump resoundingly.
I get nervous. I want to believe that too. Okay, in a perfect world, I think that will be the case. But I'm very nervous. What you're watching take place right now with the left has been a plan in place for 50, 60 years. They infested the academia, Hollywood. They got their fingers into the roots of all these great institutions, and this plan has been going on forever. And I think what you're watching right now is their plan come to fruition. And along come the millennials. Every poll I look at, they don't have a problem. 40 or 50% don't have a problem with socialism or punishing people for saying mean things. So their plan is coming to fruition right now, and there's enough dumb people, and not just millennials, but that are buying this stuff. And what makes me really nervous, Don, is does this make you nervous? Google controls every bit of information that people get online and everywhere, and that's how they vote. So that's what makes me. Are you nervous about Google having an effect on the 2020 election, a negative effect?
100%. I mean, I spend a lot of time on social media, and the social media masters in the book. Obviously those biased, search engines and all of this. I mean, they're able to influence incredible amounts of votes. You notice that you've never heard a left-wing, person talk about being censored, being demonetized, deplatformed, being locked out of their account for talking their views, as crazy as some of them may be. That only happens to people on the right. I've been calling it out for 3 years. So, like I said, I had literally enough material just of my own stuff and examples to show exactly what they're trying to do. And if they can do that to me, if they can do that to the president of the United States, what can't they do to, like, the little guy? What can't they do to, like, someone who's just, out there, trying to get their word out? And, how do they know that they're seeing what they want to see? I mean, I get people complaining to me, hey, man, I'm following all of a sudden all these left-wing accounts that I was never following before. Magically, they're now showing up in my feed. Not sponsored accounts, but I'm actually following them, and I never chose to follow them. I mean, you can see that this is a dry run for 2020 to try to influence the election, to try to manipulate people's thinking, and they can do it very effectively. They got more power than anyone, and it's truly scary.
It is, and just recently you were complaining about being shadow banned, which has been going on a long time for you. Twitter, though, but it's kind of a weird thing. Your dad, can you picture your dad's presidency without Twitter? I mean, after he got elected, people were saying he's tweeting too much a few months after, and he's got to get off that. That drove me nuts. I'm like, what better tool to talk to the American people directly than Twitter? Can you imagine your dad without Twitter? Where would he be?
Well, listen, I think, you can't have a filtered media today that has decided to be the marketing wing of the Democrat Party and expect objectivity. So he's played monkey in the middle with the press. He brings the message right to the people, and that's precisely why they want to prevent him from having it. Look at the last debate. The Democrats literally spent more time talking about trying to make sure Trump didn't have Twitter than they did talking about China. For example, they didn't even talk about China. But for them, that's a bigger threat, because it's not about what's good for America. It's about what's good for them getting elected. And that's the difference. They don't care about that. They care about power. They don't care about doing anything good for Americans, or they would have voted on the USMCA already. They've made that very clear, but they can't give Trump a win. It's got to be about impeachment. The impeachment inquiry started on November 9th, 2016, the second he won and took on the establishment. And that kind of nonsense is going to continue for the next 5 years while he's president. They are relentless, are they not? So I saw Rand Paul saying that he was going to out this guy. Everybody knows, well, I think we know who the whistleblower is. The people are so evil. Listen, the latest outrage, I guess I tweeted a Breitbart article this morning, that has been naming this guy. It's been out there for like a week. I thought I did it a week ago, and they're going, "Oh my God, Don Jr. He's out in the whistle." I'm like, I retweeted a Breitbart article. Like, I write op-eds for them every week. I retweet them probably 5 times a day because they're the only ones actually putting out real news. And like, now somehow he must have coordinated. I coordinated with the White House to retweet Breitbart. Like, these people are out of their minds. Like, but again, when they get something, there's always got to be an excuse. There's always got to be an allegation. There's always got to be something. Like, why not just have a transparent process in this whole thing? But, they can't do that because transparency is the enemy for them. They don't want that. They want Adam Schiff to be able to conduct this witch hunt in the basement of Congress without no one being able to see it, and the media has no problem with that. It's exactly why I wrote the book, and I hope people enjoy it.
And the whistleblower is Eric Ciaramella. Am I correct?
That's what the article says. It says allegedly. I don't actually know who the whistleblower is. Like I said, I retweeted an article that said it's allegedly that. But, Jake Tapper, Yashar Ali, all those guys, they're blowing up Twitter. Oh, my God, the president's son did. I'm like, I don't know. I retweet Breitbart 25 times a week. This is nothing all that new. It seems sort of relevant, and so I hit it. But, again, that's the outrage. Now, we're worried about his protection. They weren't so worried about my protection when my family's getting envelopes of exploding white powder. That lasted about 2 seconds. The outrage was about 2 seconds. Most of them didn't even cover it. They didn't seem to give a crap about my family when this stuff goes on. But now they'll try to create this this fake outrage about this nonsense. It's truly sickening, and the double standard is disgusting.
Let's talk about your family for a minute. Your dad and you. Your energy levels. When your dad was running for president, I've watched the debates, and he used to call Jeb Bush low energy Jeb. I thought he was talking to me. I make Jeb Bush look like a crystal meth head. Where do you guys get your nonstop energy? All great people who accomplish big things have this energy. I don't have that kind of drive. You talk about in the book, you're up for 22 hours at a time drinking Monster energy drink, and then you go on national TV with 2 hours sleep. How do you, and where does your dad get it? Your dad's 112 years old. Where does he get the energy?
He's just always had it, man. That's the way he's always been. He, doesn't sleep much. Up at 5, always going, always working. That's just what it is. He's, it's in the genes, I guess. And so, it's all we ever know. Maybe I inherited some of that as well.
Let me ask you about your grandfather. Your dad embraces controversy. He runs towards the fire, which I think is the best asset for a president ever. I've never seen a guy.
Yeah, 100%.
Is there anybody? And oh, by the way, I wanted to preface this whole interview as I'm a big Trump fan. I'm a comedian doing a streaming live show, so I'm not going to be unbiased here. Okay, I think your dad's the best thing to happen in this country since the Lombardos brought pizza to the United States. So for you people going, oh, this is softball, I just happen to believe in what he's doing so much. But yeah, his energy and his embracing controversy. Was he always like that? Did he get that from his dad?
No, listen, he likes the fight. He's a fighter. He's a counterpuncher. We talk about that. I go through examples in our family's history of that, in the book, and really try to cover that in great detail. Again, there's only so much you can do in a couple-minute interview. There's only so much you can do in tweet form. But to really have 300 pages to get into at length, talk about that, to talk about him and, that evolution. And, even me, talk about that evolution. It took me a lot longer to realize I was probably a lot more like him than I would have ever thought, and it took us being backed into a corner, attacked ruthlessly by these animals for the last few years to really drive that point home. It makes me want to get out there. It makes me want to fight that much harder for the future of America that I want my kids to grow up in, and that I want my kids to be able to recognize when they're older. And if you let that other side with the crazy stuff that they're pushing these days take over, that ain't going to happen. So we got to fight.
I love there was a part in the book where you mentioned when you realized for the first time that, hey, we could win this thing. You said I think it was you giving a speech in Colorado, and you got a call from the guy who runs the venue. Tell the people about that.
Well, yeah, I got, this venue, and it was, Hillary Clinton was here yesterday, and she had 250 people. I'm like, how are we doing? I go, we've had to upsell the venue. You're at 3,500 people. I go, Jesus, do they know it's Donald Trump Jr.? Because I don't want to get sued for, faulty advertising. They're like, no, here's the sign. It's Jr. I was like, if that many people are coming to see me, and the day before, the actual candidate on the other side is drawing 250 people, I'm like saying, there's something here. This message is resonating. It's working, and you continue to see that to this day in the rallies. And, the mainstream media will, did you see those disgusting people at the rally? They waited there in their flip-flops. That must be their formal wear. Ha, 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 ha. The level of hatred that liberal elite and the mainstream media, have for the hardworking men and women who just want to live their American dream is pretty sick. And again, the book has been an interesting thing for me to be able to just take that out in long form, to rail against this stuff and to push back.
Yeah, well, my friends always say, "Well, he's unpresidential." Even my mother, who's a Trump, but I don't look. He's too unpresidential. And I said, "You realize the office he sits in is owned by us, the people. This is what we love about him." I said, "Who do you think the American people, the average Joe out there, relates to more, the working stiff, a Barack Obama or a Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump?" I go, they give that office too much weight. That is our office. We're the taxpayer. That's our place. And that's how he treats it. He never forgets that. And that plain spokenness is what I love. But what's your response when they go, "Oh, he's not presidential"? What does that even mean? He's getting shit done, Don.
Well, listen, if this isn't, the Obama administration where anything he could do, oh, that's a wonderful, wonderful plan, Mr. Obama. The mainstream media, they got 8 years off. They didn't have to do anything. They just had to do a great job, no matter what. When you're under attack, when you have the mainstream media, convicting you, and you have half of Congress saying you committed treason, trying to throw your kids in jail, doing all this stuff, you got to fight back. You can't just roll over and die. The conservatives have been really good at rolling over and dying for 50 years, but now you got a guy that's willing to counterpunch, and they're not going to give you a break. They're not going to go easy on you if you're nice to them, but when they're vicious to you, you got to hit back. I wish there were more of us on our side that would do that. They're starting to appear, but it hasn't been the way Republicans have historically done it. And so in these times and under these circumstances, you need someone who's willing to fight back, and he is a fighter.
Well, that's what George W. Bush didn't do. I used to swear at the TV because he was getting badmouth every day. They would turn the other cheek. And I would go, "What are you doing? You have to push back." I have a lot of your dad in me. My parents always said growing up that my problem was I never let anything go. I'd be at the mall. Yeah. Even now, I could be at the mall and an 8-year-old girl could be staring at me. I go, "What the fuck are you looking at?" I'm sort of like your dad. I guess it's a teachable moment.
Yeah, well, listen, I don't know if I've gone that far yet, but man, they're making me. They're making me. I think they drove me to write a book, so maybe it's getting to me after all.
Please tell me that your dad, in this up 2020 race coming up, please tell me part of it's going to be not just him mentioning everything he's done so far. Please tell me you probably can't give away secrets, but there's going to be a slow drip of what happened with the Russia hoax and Hillary. First of all, I don't even think any of the people running on the Democrat side right now, I don't think they're going to be the nominee. Here's my prediction. It's either going to be Hillary jumping in with their fat ankles or Mayor Bloomberg. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, they did this thing with Hillary. There were 6 donors that really want to recruit her. I'm like, 6 donors? That's going to be interesting. And I don't think Bloomberg wants it. I don't think he wants to go up against Trump one-on-one. I'm not saying he's not a smart guy. He's very accomplished. Yada yada. He doesn't want to go one-on-one against Trump and have the inevitable Jeb Bush low energy moment. I think he's got too much of an ego for that. So I don't see that ever happening. But you never know. But in the meantime, I'm very happy with the field that we're competing against. Watching the lunacy that is there. Joe Biden's the leader. Most days he doesn't remember what state he's in, but minor details. I think he'll do great one-on-one against Trump. This should be fun.
Who do you want to see be the nominee from the Democrats? Who would you like to see your dad go?
Honestly, right now it makes no difference to me. I don't know that I see. There's no one that I would rather run against. It's like they all have their weaknesses that we will definitely be able to point out to the American people, and the media will try to cover up as they have for the last few months. I think Joe Biden's got the most amount of those weaknesses already exposed, but again, he's had the most exposure around. So the others will make theirs very apparent very soon as well.
I know Buttigieg is moving up. Can you explain to me, Don, how does a guy, he's a war vet. He saw action. He was actually over. How can he be a veteran of wars, see action, and have the political views he does? Please explain that to me.
I don't know. Honestly, I don't know anything about him. I know he's an absentee mayor. Most of his constituents have no idea where he is or what he's done. So, I don't really know enough about him. I guess that'll take time, too.
But you're confident he'll crush any of those people, even with Google interfering?
Man. Just look at the results.
Yeah. No, he's I just want to real quickly get back to Twitter. I lost it. You talk about bias and how they come after you and your father and what they do to guys like me. I lost a 6-figure radio job for a tweet. And you mentioned it in the book. You mentioned the woman from, Fresno State, or the professor who, after Barbara Bush died, said, "I'm glad she's dead," and she raised a bunch of war criminals. What was her name? Gerard?
Yeah, well, again, if you're on the left, you can say whatever you want. There's no consequences. It's brushed off as a minor detail. If you're on the right, you get thrown off Twitter, you get deplatformed, you get canceled, you lose your job. You've seen it all. We've seen it all. It's again, I go into great lengths in it, in the book, and I really hope that your readers your listeners can go check it out and maybe get a good insight into 2020, get a good insight into terms of what we've gone through, as having a front row seat in terms of American history, and get a better insight into my father, our family, and what we plan on keeping doing. But I really appreciate the time, and look forward to talking to you guys again soon, because I know we will be back on the air over the next sprint that will be the next year coming into the election.
Donald, I can't thank you enough, and again, I'm a huge fan of what your dad does and what you do and defending him, and we can't thank you enough for joining the show, and good luck with the book, and hopefully we'll talk soon.
Thank you very much, man. I hope all your readers go out and buy Triggered. It'll be some fun.
It's a great book. Thank you, Donald.
Be well.
Hey, guys, come see me on tour. I'll be at the Comedy Club of Kansas City on November 8th and 9th. I haven't been there in years. Cannot wait. And I'll also be doing shows in upstate New York, 2 shows in Georgia, one in Brunswick and one in Tifton. That's in November. And be sure to make plans now to ring in the New Year's with me at Terrytown Music Hall, Terrytown, New York. And get tickets and details for all the shows at nickdip.com. I will see you guys then.